Greetings, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast. We appreciate you joining us. My name is Dina Evans, and I'm the Senior Manager of Global Events here at LookingGlass Cyber Solutions. I'm very excited about today's presentation. It's on making threat intelligence affordable for the mid-market. We've got two fantastic LookingGlass presenters today. We've got Eric Olson and we've got Vincent Sweeny, who is pinch hitting for our illustrious James Carnell, who couldn't be with us today, but he's a fantastic addition to our presentation. I'm going to let these gentlemen introduce themselves here in just a minute. Before we do, I just want to cover a very few little housekeeping notes regarding the Bright Talk webinar platform. If anyone has questions, please make sure to submit them through the chat window. You should see that underneath your main screen. We will divert till the very end and handle all the questions in the Q&A section at the end of today's presentations, but feel free to submit them throughout as we go along. If we happen to run out of time and don't get to all the questions, don't worry about it. We will address them and see you directly as soon as the webcast concludes. So feel free, ask away. And also note that any questions that are presented through the chat screen can only be viewed by our presenters and not by the full audience. So if there's anything that you would like addressed one-on-one, just make a note on that and we will address that with you after the webcast. Also note that there's some attachments and links for you to peruse at your convenience. There's some great resources that are relevant to today's topic, so be sure and take a look at those. And then lastly, and very importantly, if anyone still needs to obtain their 1 hour of CPE credit towards your professional certification for viewing our webinar today, if you didn't enter your membership number previously when you registered for this webinar, you can just send us your membership number through the chat screen. You don't have to send us a name or anything. The chat screen automatically links it to whom it came from, so we can see that. So be sure and get that to us if you need your CPE credits. But that's enough of the housekeeping. So right now, without any other further delay, let me go ahead and pass it over to Eric. So Eric, take it away.
Thanks very much, Dina. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Sounding great.
Okay, terrific. Well, hello, everyone. We always like to start off by introducing ourselves. Some of you who are regular listeners to the monthly comedy hour here know me. I'm the Vice President of Intelligence Operations at LookingGlass. That means that I, Eric, run the teams, the threat researchers, configuration engineers, and other folks who handle the upstream part of our business, all of the inbound data, advanced collections, underground forums, marketplaces, that sort of thing, that feed the beast that is our back-end database. And with me I have Vince Sweeny, who's going to introduce himself.
Great. Glad to be here, Eric. My name is Vincent Sweeny. I'm the Manager of Threat Intelligence as a Service. I know that James is typically on these meetings, but I have some pretty large shoes to fill. But hopefully I'll be able to do it some justice here this afternoon, but great to be here.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks for being with us. I'm sure we're going to have a good time.
So I pretty much know what we're going to be talking about today, but as far as what we're going to be discussing, can you tell the listeners what to expect from our banter?
Absolutely. Obviously good humor, and you can't see it on the phone, but good looks. I do like to signpost any talk longer than about 10 minutes so that folks know where we're going, why we're going there, and how we're going to get there.
Sure.
So what we're going to cover today, first, we're going to do 2 minutes or less on LookingGlass as a company for those who are not familiar with it. And it's not just gratuitous marketing.
Sure.
What we do as a company writ large is actually very germane to today's topic. So we'll talk about essentially the 4 parts of the LookingGlass business because they will all tie into today's topic.
Okay.
The second is definitions. This is an industry even more rife than most with buzzwords and lingo. And I think it's always good to put a stake in the ground and say, when we talk about threat intelligence or intelligence-led security or whatever it is,
sure,
here's what we mean.
Mm-hmm.
Having done that, we'll talk about the various types and sources of threat intelligence. It is not monolithic. They're not all the same. And then getting to the meat of today's topic, which is making what I think the pre-game email called, big bank protection available to smaller institutions.
Sure.
There are basically 3 problems in bringing a robust threat intelligence capability to the mid-market and smaller institutions.
Mm-hmm.
They are around data, labor, and business model or business case, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about each of those,
Okay.
what the problems are, and then how LookingGlass, drag them to the ground and beat them into submission.
Sure.
And the solution that resulted from that, which is our threat intelligence as a service portfolio, which Vincent, my colleague, knows very well. And then we'll open it up to some Q&A and see if anybody can stump the speakers.
Sure. Sounds good.
Awesome.
So as far as your take on what the 4 variables are as far as LookingGlass is as a company, can you sort of walk us through that and why it's important for everybody to know on hand?
Absolutely. In order to address the need that threat intelligence as a service, this package was designed to do, it's important to understand that there are a lot of components to what a traditional enterprise threat intelligence operation would look like, and
Sure.
they are writ large: assessing risk, acquiring and managing intelligence, and then mitigating risk. And if you put those in sort of operational terms of folks like us at the coalface who turn wrenches every day,
Yeah.
what that really means is data. That's collection of data, aggregation of data, normalization of data, storing of data, mining of data, et cetera.
Sure.
Services. We are not here to talk about a tool or software. We're here to talk about a fully managed service, and that means people, expertise, the analysts and other experts who will actually take care of providing a lot of the manpower
Sure.
for the service.
Mm-hmm.
The software platforms that deal with all of this data and enable the services to be delivered. And then finally, the 4th leg of the table, if you will, at LookingGlass is our mitigation platforms. These are physical devices that actually sit in the network and do active defense.
Mm-hmm.
The first 3 of those 4 pillars of the business have all been integrated, aggregated, layered with people, and packaged in a cost-effective way.
Sure.
So in order to have slain this dragon that we're here to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have that portfolio of capabilities.
Sure. Okay. So since the data is not intelligence, can you sort of walk us through some of the differences?
Absolutely. As I said, we start with data, and I happen to have the privilege of running the team of smarter people than I, who collect and manage the collection of all of that data.
Sure.
And I will be the first to say I like data. I love feeds. We ingest them. We buy them. We make them. We sell them. I love data feeds.
Sure.
Data is not intelligence. And so what I mean by that is that you can have all the data coming in that you want, but until it goes through some transformation, some process, it's just data. All the blacklists and block lists and bad IPs and hash signatures in the world doesn't mean you actually have intelligence. So we've tried to put a stake in the ground to say, okay, what makes it, what closes that gap?
Sure, sure. And a lot of people tend to sort of define that as it being noise, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've heard that depiction of it as well.
Absolutely. A lot of our customers' complaints about so-called threat intelligence feeds
Sure.
is that they are either very noisy,
Mm-hmm.
meaning there's a lot of false positives,
Mm-hmm.
or they may be interesting data, but there's no way to apply them to their own organization.
Sure.
So what we've done here at LookingGlass, as some of you listening may know, we try to do this in many of our webinars, which is to take some buzzword of the year, pin it to the ground, put a stake through it, and say, this is what we mean when we say it. So for that data to become intelligence, it has to be refined or processed or subjected to analysis such that the resulting output to which the data are an input meets 3 criteria. The first is it must be relevant to the organization at hand. General reading is not intelligence.
Sure.
So, for example, if someone provides you a feed of signatures for malicious binaries, but 96% of those are Windows binaries, and your shop runs all Mac and Linux,
It means nothing to you. Yeah, absolutely not.
It's not in any way relevant to your organization.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean the quality of the data is poor.
Or it's good reading for
It's
somebody
good
else.
reading.
Yeah.
Exactly. The second thing is that it has to be actionable. If you cannot use the information, the data that has been processed, refined, scored, prioritized, filtered, subsetted, or categorized, to either change your security posture, make a change to a policy, inform a managerial decision, or take an action, including the informed decision not to act, like, the juice ain't worth the squeeze, I see that problem, but
I'm just going to let it go by the wayside,
I'm not going to spend $50 to solve a 25-cent problem, right?
Yeah.
Classic risk management. So it must prompt some action, even if that action is a decision not to do something.
Not to act, okay, yeah.
Finally, it has to have value. And what I mean by value is organizationally, in government, that's typically mission-oriented. In the private sector, it's some form of business metric.
Right.
And as I like to say, for those who don't know, I've been in intelligence for about 20 years, but once in the misty past, I was a classically trained MBA bean counter at a Big Four firm. And I like to say that there are only 6 reasons a business does anything, right?
Yeah.
Find or keep customers, find or keep employees, raise revenues, raise margins, cut costs, or increase efficiency. If you can't tie it to one of those things, good luck getting your budget next year, because the business has to see value, and pretty much value boils down to reduced risk or higher profits or lower costs or something that the board or the CEO cares about.
Sure, exactly. Okay.
If you can't get data refined down to something that helps meet these 3 criteria, by our definition, what you have is not intelligent. It may be good bathroom reading,
right,
but it's not intelligent.
Right, exactly. Okay. So you've gone through and described threat intelligence for us. Can you give me some examples of different types and their sources?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the classic definition, the cyber threat intelligence industry, as it was shouted about, it was the hot topic of the year at RSA a year or 2 ago. Everybody was at threat intelligence, the only word anybody wanted to talk about. And what they meant in most cases, the classic cyber threat intel industry, what they really mean is structured data feeds. Machine-readable XML or JSON or sticks format data where IP addresses and CIDRs and domain names and URLs and hashes, stuff like that, are transferred between machines for some kind of automated action.
So all those data dumps coming to a refined structure where you can actually read something from it, or it's a little bit more user-friendly at that point as opposed to just a massive data dump.
Absolutely, but in this swim lane, if you will, the refinement is around something that a machine, a firewall, a gateway, a UTM can take some kind of action, like, this is a bad site, block it. You know, very simple decision making, often along the lines of block or allow. The second category, which sort of roared onto the scene a couple of years after the original IP blacklist kind of model, was intelligence that is online indications and warnings that are discovered in the unstructured, user-generated content of the public internet, as opposed to, say, structured data from a sensor net or a honeypot.
Sure.
This is, and I don't know if you all out there can see the detail on the slide, but some examples here are, you know, Anonymous sends a tweet saying they're mad at organization X or company Y. There's a snippet of a chat discussion. We have a message monitor as part of our back end that keeps continuous ears on about 11,000 IRC channels and networks, as well as public and semi-public, not person-to-person private, of course, but public and semi-public channels and forums on various messaging networks like Telegram. There are all kinds of things that leak inadvertently onto the web. There's a screenshot there of GitHub, a website where I can't tell you how many customers have had sensitive information inadvertently posted there by, for example, their development team.
Okay. I think I knew what you're talking about. Yeah.
Hard-coded API keys, usernames and passwords in test code that they then forget and leave there for years to come, that sort of thing. And finally, no discussion of threat intelligence would be complete without the obligatory screenshot of a marketplace on the dark web, because that's, you know, this year's buzzword of the week. So you have all of this unstructured user-generated content from which there is definitely actionable, relevant client or company-specific information to be sifted and derived. The problem is, as we'll touch on, keeping an eye on that vast universe of sources.
Sure.
Finally, either from the vendors you engage or from the vendors they aggregate through a SIM or a threat intelligence platform or something, there's what we call FinTel. That's finished intel. These are long-form prose written by analysts to be consumed by readers, right? So we've run the gamut from highly structured content to or machine-readable data feeds to unstructured online content to the distillation into human-readable prose from a person, written by a person for a person.
Okay.
Does that spectrum make sense?
It does, and it seems that we've gone through, like you stated, the entire gambit of all those iterations of threat intelligence.
And all of them are potentially valuable.
Sure.
If you can get them to meet the three definitions on the previous page.
Exactly. Okay. Gotcha. Oh wow, you're taking me back a little bit on this one. Might have to get my Soul Train slippers out on this one. I haven't seen the Netscape logo in a while, but so this problem, as far as the data is concerned, seems like over time it might be an issue because in the earlier days it was onesie twosie, but now since the web has blown up so exponentially, you have to worry about numerous things outside of just what you used to have to worry about 20 years ago, right?
Absolutely, and I've actually been at this almost that long, which is amazing to me. And Vince is exactly right. What we're diving into here is the first of the three problems that I like to say the dragons we had to slay from the get-go in order to do what we need to do in order to create the threat intelligence as a service.
Sure.
That is to make big company protection affordable for the mid-market and the smaller institutions.
Okay.
So let's take on that first problem, what I call the data problem. In the age of Netscape, the web was basically small enough to fit in a Home Depot bucket, right? And crawling it, querying it, searching via Lycos and Alta Vista, right? This was a very manageable problem.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you look back, one of the companies that now makes up LookingGlass, way back in the day, we actually did the first empirical study to try and size the web when it was still small enough to do that in any way, in a reasonable way. What happened was that the web matured into all kinds of user-generated, rather than company to audience, user-generated content, which began with bulletin boards, and actually even pre-web there was internet relay chat, and then we had bulletin boards and forums, and then this blog thing happened, and then what's this Twitter stuff, and so the social media, so you have Facebook and Twitter, and now you have media shade. You've got Flickr and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and Reddit and the dark web and IRC and Telegram and
Tumblr.
It only goes in one direction.
The
universe of both new protocols, new document formats, new sources to keep an eye on only goes upward. That's the first problem. How do you cost effectively cover the surface web and social media and the dark web and IRC and hacker forums and underground marketplaces and the Bitcoin blockchain and a partridge in a pear tree without blowing your budget, right? That's problem number one.
So what are some of the issues that a company might come across from a labor perspective?
Problem number two. For those who are listening who are familiar with the classic intelligence cycle, this is one version of such a diagram. For those who are not, simply put, if you start from a business need at the 12 o'clock position, the classic model says you define your requirements, the decision that needs taking, or the information need you are trying to fill. You task collection. People and systems go and collect data. That data then has to be sifted, sorted, prioritized, and ranked. And at that point, you lick your thumb, you go through the pile of stuff, you decide the 1% that might be useful, then you have to read it, then you begin production of the analysis product, that leads to an outcome, like a decision or an action.
And then at that point, are people actually hiring additional resources to help out with that, or it just depends on what they're planning to do? I mean, how does it typically go?
Well, in the model this is built on, which is government, where basically you can have as many people as Congress gives you money for, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the answer is there are people who are dedicated collection managers.
Sure.
There are exploitation specialists, production analysts, et cetera. In a commercial organization, the problem is that just to crack the data problem that we just spoke about, to do the collection across sources, document types, formats, protocols, surface web, social media, dark web, search engines, right? What happens writ large, and I've had people confirm this, from global banks to Department of Defense intelligence agencies, is that they spend 80% of their time, people, budget, and effort on the right-hand side just trying to get their hands around the data, leaving almost none of their resources where all the value is, which is the left-hand side, where you actually produce intelligence products so you can make a decision or take an action. So the second problem is that in the traditional model, a huge portion of the budget and effort and scarce talented people, because we all know that cyber, if you have cyber in your title, you're in short supply, right? Then they end up spending far too much on the right-hand side of the cycle, where all of the, or a lot of the cost is, but none of the value.
Right.
The value's in the product.
At the end of the day,
So that's the second problem, is that the people who are the scarcest of resources, even more in many institutions than money, right? The people, the talent, all get burned up in the wrong place.
So as you alluded to a little earlier, you've been doing this for the past 20 or so years. I mean, have you seen some of the trends over the years that have pretty much fostered threat intelligence as a service, or can you explain what some of those are?
Yeah, these are, what this really gets at is the drivers for why we set out on this errand, if you will, this journey, to put this package together. And this is my 19th year. You know, we like to say we were doing threat intelligence before it had a cool name.
I didn't mean to date you. Sorry about that. 19. Let's put 19 on there. Sorry, not 20.
So, but the company's been at it for 20. So, what we've learned along the way, and this is where the business problems bring a lot of institutions, smaller, mid-market and smaller institutions, to a screeching halt on effectively deploying a real threat intelligence capability. Are these? First of all, even if you get budget, you go out and you buy a bunch of data feeds and you try to bring them all together. The integration of the data, normalizing it, storing it, figuring out how to query it, where to put it, essentially all the problems that gave birth to the tip and SIM industries, right? I need a pane of glass for all this stuff, right? Integration and implementation are the hill these things die on, right? You get the budget, you get the data, and then guys and gals with wrenches spend 9 months in a closet, right, putting cables in the back of things and trying to get it to all talk to each other. And that is where, especially institutions that don't have as deep a bench on things like integration engineers and people who speak sticks and taxi, run into all kinds of exploding costs. Second, there are 100 vendors and 500 so-called threat feeds in the market, including several dozen that we ourselves produce for our own software platforms and services. The problem is that you often have to trial them or buy them, even if they're free trials. You have to figure out which ones are good, which ones are noisy, which ones overlap, so you spend your budget in the right places. There's a mountain of data, and even if it were all free, which the best of it isn't, right? It takes time and money and people just to figure out which ones to use. Third, again, like the hill these things die on, right? Noise is a killer. False positives, not just because it wastes time and it wastes budget, but alert fatigue is a serious problem. The people who sit in NOCs and SOCs and in front of SIMs 24 hours a day, right, working all kinds of crazy shifts and dealing with all kinds of fires, every time the system cries wolf and it's a sheep, right, they get frustrated, they get worn out, and the really important thing that actually is the wolf is 27 items down the list
Yeah.
and doesn't get looked at for a week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that's bad for analyst turnover, it's bad for job satisfaction, it's bad for the business case and the budget. Oh, and by the way, it's bad for your security.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And finally, the folks, the big enterprises, the global banks, the folks who do this in a very robust way, they bring in structured and unstructured content, raw data, and finished intel. They integrate it all with databases and panes of glass and cool tools, and they translate it into something that they can use and implement and action. Here's the problem. The data, the tools, the integration, the staff, if you look at what it costs to do all those things, historically, what all that boils down to is smaller institutions don't have the resources, the budget, the talent, and the team to do all of those things, all the steps required, and then staff it around the clock.
Yeah, that would be hard to get your arms around, absolutely. So maybe you can explain some of the blocking and tackling of some of those problems, which are, again, data, labor, and business.
Yeah, I like to call this what started out as a foolhardy exercise, or hey, let's just throw spaghetti at a whiteboard and see if we're crazy, right? The meeting that started this all a year ago. The question we put to ourselves is, okay, we've just spent 20 years learning how large institutions spend vast sums of money to do this.
Yeah.
And let me preface this by saying there are still large institutions we service. I was literally looking at one client the other day. After prioritization, vetting, confirmation of relevance, and publication as an actual actionable item.
Okay.
One of our larger clients received from LookingGlass 68,000 items in the 12 months through yesterday. That's not a feed, that is post-human analysts. So there are still large enterprises that do need their own systems, a staff of 20 people, et cetera. This is not for them, right? Yeah. We set out to build a service that said, how can a mid-market bank, even a credit union, where the IT staff and the security staff are the same 4 people, right? Or whatever, how can we bring the kind of capabilities we bring to those large enterprises, but at a price point and a scope that both meets their problem space, their exposure, and matches to their budget. So that was what we set out to do, which basically means we have to tackle the 3 problems I just described.
Sure, gotcha. And then the data.
So the first problem we talked about was the myriad of collection sources and types and protocols and environments. So here at LookingGlass, we bucketed those into 3 categories, and I'm going to take you through each one.
Okay.
The first is the traditional surface web and social media, what I technically refer to as stuff my mom understands.
Okay.
So we built something, an internal platform called the Open Source Intelligence System, OSIS in local parlance. And what that does, in a very few words, is we spent many years and tens of millions of dollars saying, okay, all of that web crawling, domain name registration, social media, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, blah, 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 all that stuff, get it all on a customer-specific basis. Go and seek the names and brands and IP addresses and executives and things that mean our customer, and get it all into one bucket, seamlessly and in near real time across the web. We built a system to solve that. In addition, there is that classic structured threat intelligence space, all of those data feeds, all of those indicators of compromise, the domains and hashes and IP blacklists that the threat intel feed industry lives and breathes. Well, LookingGlass has a threat intelligence platform or TIP product called Scout Prime. Right out of the crate, it comes with, I think, 80-odd feeds, including about 20 from us, baked into the platform, and 50 or 60 others from credible third parties and vendors and suppliers and government feeds and all of that. And it aggregates all of those indicators, millions and millions of them a day, into a single aggregated normalized pane of glass. This is where you footprint or insert the assets, IPs and domains and websites that mean the customer, and it says, okay, here's everything the structured threat data world knows about compromises or concerns on those networks.
Okay.
And then there's what I call the spooky wooky stuff, right? This is the dark web, the underground marketplaces, the bitcoins and the blockchains and all the stuff that they use on CSI Cyber to sound interesting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All of the underground and the things that my mom has never seen or would understand, but where all the hackers and bad guys hang out.
Yeah.
We built a third internal research platform that monitors those environments.
Okay.
So we've put all of those data sets into platforms designed and optimized to handle them, and then we put them all together.
Okay.
And that brings us to problem number 2, right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So by aggregating the entire open source web social media space, the structured threat feed space, and the underground dark web stuff, we've normalized and aggregated the whole enchilada on a customer-specific basis. Customer IPs, domains, networks, assets, brands, executives, locations, physical locations. And we have put all of that into a common, high-throughput workflow tool. Such a thing didn't exist for threat intelligence, so we built our own. It's called HyperTune. And it allows a room full of analysts, which is the second piece of solving the labor problem, right? We built this normalized system that brings all of this data together, prioritizes it, scores it, makes the scary stuff bubble to the top, and then fills a room full of smart people 24 hours a day who look at customer-specific candidate findings, vet them, and publish them after a human analyst has confirmed they are relevant to the specific customer. It's a process excellence business. We've been doing this so long, we've figured out how to do it cost effectively, and unlike any individual institution, we can amortize it over 300 customers, so no one institution has to pay the freight to have built all of this stuff.
Sure, okay.
What this allows us to do is bring all of the data from the 3 buckets, if you will, surface and social, deep and dark web, structured threat data, and the IOC feeds, bring it all together in a common workflow, run it through a team of human analysts, and only when it is relevant, publish it to the customer's space in a portal where they see things. This is not generic reporting about, oh, there's a new malware campaign. This is customer-specific findings. We see evidence of a virus infection on this server that belongs to you. Your company is being threatened by this hacker group. Customer-specific findings are published as, quote, relevant incidents or threat incidents, as we call them, in our portal. That gives you a user interface and an API so that it can be used either via a browser or you can pull the data into tools and workflows that you're already using, which at a business level means you're not throwing away the investment you already made in some other tool.
Sure, sure. And all this information is fluid, right? I mean, you can sort of pick and prod what you want to have in, take out. If you are getting some of that so-called noise that you stated a little earlier, you can maybe pull some of that information out, or it's all changeable on the fly, correct?
Absolutely. Our 24/7 watch center that processes the incidents and publishes them after human confirmation has a window in that HyperQ tool where every time they find a relevant item, a window comes up that we call client procedure notes.
Okay.
So exactly what the customer considers relevant and not relevant, who to call, who to contact, how to contact them. We literally have customers who say, if it's before 5 o'clock on even days, right, call this number, and if it's after 5 o'clock on odd number days, send a text message to this other person. It is entirely customized to every client.
Okay.
So what we put together then, ultimately, through all of the aggregation and coupling of all those LookingGlass capabilities, our collection systems, our ability to acquire intelligence, our software platforms that aggregate the intelligence, our services and delivery teams who know how to vet and process the intelligence and publish it to a customer-facing system. We put all of that together, and this was very interesting. We took approximately 100,000 delivered incidents from the last year across our customer base and said, okay, if you categorize them, kind of an 80-20 analysis, if you will, what do we actually deliver to clients? And the answer turned out to be like a 99-1 ratio. It turned out to be 30 recurring types, 16 of which fall into the information security functional area. As an aside, there are equivalent packages to what we're describing today for brand protection and physical or corporate security buyers. But for our focus today, which is the InfoSec need, if you will, 99% of everything we published fell into 16 clear categories.
Wow, okay.
8 came from the structured IOC and threat intelligence feeds, the domains, the hashes, the indicators of compromise.
Okay.
These say your network, Miss or Mr. Customer, has some kind of problem, right? And there are underneath each of these 8 categories maybe dozens of individual feeds and millions of individual indicators. But ultimately, you know, these 17 different feeds all roll up to one thing. There's a virus on your network, and we can see it. The other 8 come from the unstructured content on the web. So finding compromised user account credentials for sale on the dark web, which we do to the tune of millions per week. Suspicious and lookalike domain registrations, which may be weaponized a week later for spear phishing emails or spoof sites. Sometimes a company will be required to report a breach, for example, to a regulatory body or a state governing body, and many of the people in the company themselves don't know that that breach has happened or don't know that it's been announced. So we monitor those breach announcement feeds and sites so that if you come up, we also use this in our third-party risk service to tell you when those announcements go public. Phishing and lookalike sites, sensitive, confidential, or internal documents, proprietary information or intellectual property, blueprints, product plans, unreleased financials, the hard-coded API key in the GitHub submission that we talked about. Discussion by any of about 6,000 known threat actors and groups we track continuously.
Is it 6,000? I thought it was a little more.
It may be more. I'm a little out of date with the folks who actually do the work. Many thousands of individual groups and actors. And finally, just about anything that discusses a client, if it comes from the dark web, underground marketplaces, hacker forums, or IRC, just about anything, because of where they're found, anything from those environments is going to be reviewed by an analyst.
Okay, gotcha.
And if something is relevant, it'll be published as a key finding, an incident, as we call it.
Sure, okay. And so to recap for folks, maybe you can talk about all the services that we offer, and also remind listeners what's actually involved with threat intelligence as a service.
Yep. Thanks, Vince. Our whole portfolio, I will end before Q&A, I will end where we started, which is to say there's a reason we talk you through everything LookingGlass does. Right? We acquire intelligence. We bring in or generate vast quantities of data, score it, refine it, rack it, stack it, categorize it, color it, label it. Second thing we do is we build the software platforms that allow us to consume and visualize and work with those vast amounts of data. We have 150 people, give or take, in our services line of business alone out of the 300 and odd that make up LookingGlass, who know how to collect, process, vet, publish, interpret, and write up intelligence. And we have our mitigation devices that can leverage that intelligence to actually defend the network in line in real time. Threat intelligence as a service, this managed service, this cost-effective package, leverages the first 3 of those 4 parts of the company in a single soup to nuts, right? We collect it, we vet it, we score it, we visualize it, we analyze it, we review it with humans, and we publish it. And you don't have to worry about the data and the feeds and the software platform and the tools and the people to make all that happen. It's a managed service. It's up and running in days. We usually have a kickoff meeting and production of relevant findings usually starts within days of that kickoff. Everything is human vetted and customer specific. There is nothing to install. It can all be done through a browser and a REST API. The portal, in addition to your customer-specific incidents, contains curated security news feeds, threat calendars and maps, and a bunch of cool reference tools and lookup databases that we like. Perhaps most amazingly, when you factor in just the fact that this is all human vetted around the clock,
Sure.
For the smaller institutions, this package or managed service starts at less than $2,000 a month.
Wow.
And I think really given the breadth of what we've cobbled together from all the parts of our business here into a streamlined service, that's honestly, I think that's a really aggressive price point.
Yeah,
we're very proud of it.
Yeah.
I mentioned also that there are analogous physical security and brand protection as a service modules, if you will, for people in those functional areas. And of course, there are other services that are corollary to this that we're happy to provide. For example, our Strategic Intelligence Subscription Service, or Stratus, as we call it. This is somewhere between, I think, 40 and 100 reports per year that are the more general. Here's the latest campaign, the newest threat actor, or the latest malware. Here's policy guidance on new regulations.
And that's more bespoke, though, from a providing perspective, right? I mean, it's specific to an industry or...
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. But it's not this incident. These are long-form 5, 10, 20-page intelligence products, if you will.
Okay.
We also do on-demand investigations. I need a piece of malware analyzed, an investigation of a person of interest. We received a suspicious package in the mail.
Oh, sure.
You name it. These guys and gals take those on. And response removal and takedown. When we deliver a suspicious domain, a phishing site, an imposter social media account, a brand infringing site, and you go, can you get that taken off the internet? We actually have a dedicated team, 24/7 for 11 years, 12 years, something like that, that has done nothing but whack things with a hammer and get them taken off the internet thousands of times a month, 24 hours a day, all over the world.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of ancillary or related services we're happy to bring to the table if needed. Again, we think that the breadth of what we do and the price point we've been able to target for small institutions and mid-tier institutions with smaller footprints than, say, the global banks we have traditionally serviced.
Sure.
We're really excited about it.
Yeah, we absolutely are. Yeah, definitely so.
And so with that, I hope that's a good overview, not just of what the service delivers or what we are offering as a product, but how we got there, why we went down this road, how we put the pieces of LookingGlass together in a new way, and are able to provide a robust service at a price point that is more oriented toward the mid-market. I will tell you, if you look at those incident types, if you will, I don't normally do this, but I'll back up. For example, we have seen proposals to some of our customers where just the detection and takedown of phishing sites is priced far higher than everything you see on this page. So we're really excited about it.
That many sites to actually take down, or wow?
Or just because they're not efficient at identifying those types of problems, whereas to us, that's one of 16 types of problem all baked into the same service and the same price.
Yeah.
So we're very excited about it, and we hope the market will be too.
That we do, absolutely.
All right, Eric. Great information. We do have a few questions that have started filtering in from the audience. So we've got a few minutes to address these. If you guys still have questions, be sure to send them through. Here's one. Let's see. It says, do you have a framework for quantifying customer benefit?
Help me make ROI for security business cases. In some form, we get this question a lot. There are a number of approaches. None of them are perfect. ROI for security the ROI on security is a topic large enough to warrant its own books, plural. I've read several of them, but let me give you a few examples of how we might approach such a framework. So first, of course, and this is part of how a lot of vendors will approach their customers. They quantify the cost and business impact of breaches that have been publicized. So from Home Depot to Equifax, there are lots of people who like to throw around, one breach can cost you $100 million.
That's right.
And so risk times impact times likelihood kind of approach.
Yeah.
I don't love that one because it says, well, if this happens to us, it's going to be really bad.
It's going to cost X. Yeah.
But how do I quantify the preventative measures that I'm taking? So here's a simple one, but particularly germane in the financial services sector. Let me start with the simplest old school incident type that is in those 16 types for the service we described today, which is spoof sites, phishing sites. Mm-hmm. We have data both internally developed and through our work with some of our client institutions that says over time, the average lifespan of a phishing site is about, I'll pull it out of my ear because I don't remember it, let's call it 3 days. Okay. We also know that the victimization hits its peak about 10 hours after the site is stood up, and the spam emails that say, update your password for this bank, go out. Mm-hmm. If the average loss is $300 per victimized customer, mm-hmm. and the average is X dollars, X customers by that 8-hour peak, then every hour faster you can detect and take down that spoof site saves fraud losses in the amount of X thousand dollars. Yeah. It doesn't take very many of those catching them early and taking them down quickly, just in the phishing category, to have more than paid for the service for the year.
Yeah. What about the WellPoint example?
Oh my gosh.
That's just,
Thank
you want to go over that? Jeez.
Sure. Another one is the weaponized, suspicious, or lookalike domain name. Yeah. Vince is referring to the Anthem health breach, at the time at least, the largest healthcare data breach in history. 80-odd million consumer healthcare or information records were stolen. It was accomplished by a lookalike domain for wellpoint.com, except the L's were ones. Yeah. That domain was registered 9 months ahead of the attack. That's right. And had they been watching for suspicious domain registrations, our service, for example, would have notified them the day that name was purchased. Had it been blocked at the mail gateway, that alone might have mitigated the entire spear phishing and data exfiltration that caused that breach to happen. That's right. So for each of these 16 incident types, each one has kind of a story you can tell that says, if we mitigate this, here's how we protect ourselves better, and here's the specific risk that we are reducing. Yeah. Sorry, Dina, do you want to take us through some of the other questions?
I do. Yeah, we've got a couple more that have come in. Here's one of them. Let's see. In your opinion, what are the 3 questions an organization needs to ask a provider before purchasing a feed or product?
What are the 3 things you should ask a provider? Strangely enough, my first one is not about all the cool intelligence and the dark web and the spooky wooky and the talented analysts. The minimum bar, because I consider those things table stakes at this point. If you can't collect across surface, social, deep, dark web, if you don't have analysts, if you can't handle vast amounts of data, if you don't have a portal and an API your customers can work with, those things are table stakes. Yeah. So the first thing I would ask is actually about the company. And the reason that I say that is if you as an enterprise or an institution are going to build workflows and processes around an intelligence provider or tool or both, you want to be darn sure that that vendor is going to be there for you 12 months or 18 months later. Sure. This space is really frothy. There are lots of startups doing cool things. The only problem is they could never pass a security or compliance audit, and they're burning through their cash at X dollars a month, and they got 9 months of runway left. So the first thing is vet the company before you worry about the product or service. Okay. Yeah. Frankly, it's a comfortable place for me to opine about because we've been at this 20 years and we already serve the most demanding institutions in the market. Sure. The second thing I would ask is talk to us about the people. Tell us about the team. I want to understand the people who deliver the services, if it's a service you're buying, And if it's a tool or software or data feed, I want to understand that the people who are generating it, are they practitioners, are they users, do they understand the pains of me as a recipient?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the third thing I would talk about is some kind of measurable quality or metric that says, I'd like to trial your tool or product or service. How do we define the goalpost? So it says, hey, if you can do this, I will buy, and if you can't, I won't.
See you later.
For example, if I take your feed into my SIM and the alerts it generates are 96% false positives, you are not getting an order from me as a vendor.
Yeah, gotcha.
Those would be my top three, Dina.
Fantastic. Here's another one. Let's see. It asks, are there some e-learning course of threat intel that LookingGlass offers to partners or clients?
Great question. Currently, I have a nuanced answer. We do have a number of computer-based training programs that we offer to customers, but they are primarily around safety and awareness. They are to and by the way, not anymore, but for the first 5 or 6 years we offered those courses, I wrote a lot of them. So I say this with great affection. They are essentially the don't click that link program.
Right.
They are about cyber safety awareness and understanding spear phishing and malicious actors and how they penetrate organizations and what they do when they get there. In terms of training in the discipline of threat intelligence, we actually have training programs that are structured and rigorous, but currently they are offered to the analysts who provide this service internally. We have not, at least to date, chosen to make those a saleable product, but that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it is.
Vince, you may have a new product
I know, right?
to manage pretty soon.
Exactly.
That is a good point. Yeah. Okay, here's another one that's come in, Eric. Let's see. I think we've got time for at least one more. In what case, let's see, do you recommend that a company develop internal process of threat intelligence?
So this is an interesting and probably more nuanced question than this forum allows. And before I give a quick answer, whoever submitted it, please consider yourself more than welcome to reach out. There's information about how to get in touch with us, up to and including call the main number on our website and ask for Eric or Vince. But in what cases would we recommend a company develop internal processes for threat intelligence? What I would say is this. The most important thing to consider is, do you have any evidence of a problem or a concern that warrants making the time, investment, and effort to develop some level of threat intelligence capability? Now, this can run the gamut from really what I want is 1 or 2 good, reliable, high-quality indicator feeds that I can stick straight into a firewall and just block the obvious bad things, all the way to, I want a dedicated team of 5 analysts who work around the clock and cover 6 languages between them. There's a spectrum of what we mean by a threat intelligence program. Certainly, I believe that almost any institution that handles confidential or personal data, health information, or money is a target. But in terms of, so if you're out there doing any of those things, you are a target to some degree. In what cases would we recommend looking at threat intelligence? The question that I would say is, have you had, first, any history of incidents, compromises, need for incident responders, hacks, breaches, etc.? Not because if you don't, it means you're not a target, but because if you have, it will make the business case, the justification to seek budget, staff, resources, etc.
High-profile CEOs as well. That's
somewhat simpler, yep.
Yeah, that actually falls under it. Yeah.
Absolutely, and it doesn't just have to be a data breach. Vince is exactly right. In many cases, it is the people who are targeted, including the leadership team. The second thing that I would look at is, do you already have in your organization what I would consider some form of KPIs or dashboarding, right? One of the first questions I learned back when I was that long ago MBA bean counter type was, the first question as a management consultant that you are either asked or often asked is, how are we doing? And the minute the customer says, oh, we're doing pretty good, you go, how do you know that?
Yeah.
So the more you can ask of your IT or security department to quantify or show, we have had, this many attempts, we've blocked these many things, we've remediated these many infections, time to detect, time to remediate, whatever those KPIs or metrics are, the more of them you see and have, the more you can begin to feel like, okay, we have some visibility into our own security posture and our attack surface. If you have no idea how bad things are or how good things are, if you don't know your own vulnerabilities, if you haven't run a pen test or a vuln scan, if you don't know what your exposure is on the dark web, start with an assessment. We're happy to provide those. Lots of other people do it too. But the more visibility your security team has into the current state, the more you can answer that question for yourself. I know that was a long answer, Dina, but it's a complicated question.
It is, and that's a good point. But yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to us. There's a contact us page on our website. And so with that, Eric, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. We're running pretty close on time. There's a couple more questions that came in, and we'll just reach out to you guys directly after the conclusion today. And I do want to make note that we will send out a copy of today's presentation slides. I've had several people ask for it. So yes, we will send it out to our attendees after the fact. So watch your email for that. But Eric and Vince, thank you so much for today's great presentation. Very good stuff, very informative. Thank you to everyone that attended our live webcast today. There will be a link of the recording as well as the slides that will be sent out to everybody, so that if you came in late or you had to take care of other things during this presentation, or if you'd like to share it with colleagues, you will have that full presentation at your fingertips. It'll be emailed out to you. Also, let's see, I want to make sure that you guys understand how you can contact us. This final slide has our social media access points, and then again, you can contact us directly through our website. There's a link with your attachments, or you can go to just LookingGlassCyber.com and go to the Contact Us page. And again, if you have any other questions for our presenters, if you would like Eric or Vince to elaborate any further, you can reach us that way. But again, thanks everybody. Eric, Vince, very good having you guys on today. Very entertaining, and I appreciate everybody being on.
Thanks so much, Dina.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you. Y'all have a good one.
You too.